Dawn, you got a record, everybody here? You're good. We don't have to do a roll call or anything for an audit meeting. Good evening. It is Monday, April 12th. This is the Town of Olive Town Board Workshop Meeting. And welcome, everyone. And I'm glad to announce that the comment period for the Shokan Pump Storage Project is over and it is closed, and we ended up with 1,500 comments. And I'll tell you, on Sunday morning, I was hoping we'd hit 1,000 on Sunday.
Yeah.
And they got 500 more comments from then till now, including 100 interveners. And there was some really strong intervention from New York City DEP, the Bureau of Water Supply, and New York State DEC. So that is all really good. And many other interveners I can't even go into who responded well to that application. And of course, I sent you guys our letter that I composed and sent that in. And I hope you got a chance to look at that. As well, I posted a Facebook post on my personal page of Kate McLaughlin's response that was just like, every time Kate writes or says something about her family, it brings tears to my eyes. So it was really a great response. I thought it was really fitting it came in at the end. So
I figured if we just set Kate on them, it would be all over anyway.
All right, so that's the update on the FERC application. We will wait and see how they respond, whether the applicant continues. There have been emails from David Linefsky going to the applicant, asking him to withdraw his application for the last few weeks. David and I have been working on that.
Wasn't there something in the Freeman about them pulling out and looking at other sites for their reservoir?
The history of the applicant has been that he keeps saying he's going to change it. He was going to take one of the sites away, then all three, then he's going to use different reservoirs. The article that came out today in the Albany Times-Union, he told the reporter he would try to do it in 2 different reservoirs. New York City reservoirs as lower basins instead of the Ashokan. But he hasn't done anything to amend the application during the comment period. So I can only hope that he either withdraws the application or FERC denies the application based on the many inaccuracies and misinformation contained in it.
Hey, Jim, what is FERC's timetable as far as just making a decision on it?
I was told 2 months.
Okay.
They have to make the decision. And that's all I know. I was actually told unprompted by the man from FERC who was handling this, that, and this was probably when we had about 350 comments on there. He said, generally they approve these applications for a preliminary permit. He goes, unless there's a lot of opposition, I've often seen the applicants withdraw the application. And that was back then. And he goes, and you have a lot of comments opposing it. So, we'll see how that plays
just
out.
to read the comments.
Yeah, they have to read the comments. Anything else on that before I move on? I did want to mention this before we get to you, Cynthia, just bear with me, please. I just want to mention that we received a resignation letter from Helen Grant on the planning board effective March 22nd. And I did put a notification on the website soliciting people interested, and I'm waiting for some responses. They are due by April 19th. We did receive one from our very own Cynthia here. And I did reach out to Paul Wright because he had expressed an interest when we appointed him to the ZBA. So we'll see how that works. All right.
I think we should send a letter to her thanking her for her service on the,
Yeah, we can, I'll read the correspondence tomorrow. We can do it then if you like. So we don't have to take an action at the workshop meeting.
Yeah.
Great.
But it, of course. All right, Cynthia, you're on.
Great. Well, thank you all for agreeing to hire us to work on this vision plan from the Musser Fund grant. And I'm very pleased to be working with two very dear esteemed colleagues of mine, Karine Dutay and Nadej Ossini, who I have known for many, many years, and worked together with them on a project on the Bronx River Arts Center. We were both on the board and we worked together on sort of the restoration of the building and the compilation of the building of a green roof. And Karine and I have kept in touch over the years. She actually lived in Mount Tremper for a while, and now she lives in West Hurley and is continuing, I'm speaking for you, her landscape architecture practice up here. And what we'd like to do is sort of walk through a little bit, have Karine walk through some of her previous projects, which we think are relevant to this. These are all included in the attachment I sent you all this morning. And we'd like to just sort of walk you through our planning process and our framework in terms of how we would like to approach this process. We have, Karine has a tremendous amount of experience working with young people and youth, guiding them in these kinds of developing sort of their designing and planning and community engagement skills. And we think that, it's just a perfect opportunity because, as you know, the high school is right next to the site. And, it's an opportunity to get Olive students sort of involved in shaping the future of the community that we hope they live in and stay in and raise families in. And to sort of really have an understanding as they do, because they live here, of sort of what this place is. And we're very focused on creating sense of place in communities and using design to advance that. And as we know, the Hamlet, we're kind of lost our sense of place. We've lost some signature buildings. We've lost some landmarks, as it were. And we've sort of got this kind of hollowed out space right in the middle of the town. And we feel like this is like a once in generational opportunity to sort of reimagine those parcels as community gathering spaces and public vibrant spaces that are sustainable and that are welcoming to everyone in the community. So that's sort of our view in terms of how we want to move forward. And we'll talk a little bit more about some more of the specifics. But Karine, if you're ready to say hi to the board, and I can share my screen and show the PDF if you would like me to do that.
Yeah, I can share it actually.
You want to
Hi,
share it?
Karine. Welcome, Karine.
Hi.
Thank you.
Hi. Thank you for having us. We are very excited to be here tonight and to introduce you to the work we have been done in Kingston. And I'm going to show you because we are designers, so we are better with design. So let me show you. So can you see my screen?
There you
Yes.
go.
Yes.
That works.
Okay. So this is, I don't know if you heard about the Pine Street Burial Ground, the African Burial Ground in Kingston. It's a site that's kind of been rediscovered recently and been acquired by the Kingston Land Trust and RMB. And so they had, we worked with them to create a beautiful design. So the way we worked with the youth, with the YMCA Farm Project, and we had them kind of like lead, we had about, I think, about the same, like 11 or 12 workshops. And through this workshop, we engaged the community. We, told them about the project, and we gathered what their vision for the site was. So it's kind of like educating the youth to be designer, and it's engaging the community through them to get all the information and have the vision. And we learned that the community is very receptive to teenagers and very happy to see them empowered and the steward of the land. And it's a very nice message all along. And so with them, we created this design, and I'm just going to go through it. We had like a kickoff event when we told the committees, this is what we're going to do, and this is how we are doing it, and we want you to be part of it, so contact us. And so we had like this nice event, and we worked with like archaeologists and lots of artists and many different professions. And they all come to tell us about, you know, their vision as a professional, and also educate the youth and get some information. So it's a very cyclic kind of way of working, and we find it like very constructive and very engaging. And at the end, you see like the last picture, we did a presentation at the Restorative Justice, and it was a standing ovation. Like it was really a very special moment where the community was so pleased by the design and everything the youth has learned, because what they do, they gather the information and after they present it. So it's a way also to educate all the community through the youth about, you know, like learning, for example, about, you know, like the watershed and all the history of the town. I think that would be very powerful. Okay, I'm going to go faster. This is another project in Kingston that's in the making. And in order to do this project, we worked a lot with the community. We did lots of community meetings, and we get inspired by the site and the history of the railroad. And so this is coming also out of lots of hours of community engagement. And I'm just going to go through this. This is a project at the YMCA. We have also, like you see, we have the teens. We teach them how to design, and we go on site and we gather information. And we're actually in the process of finishing up the playground at the YMCA farm. And you see like all the different community engagement we did through the youth also, about presenting the design, getting feedback, and so forth. So this is something, yeah, I think that's a project we have selected to show you, just to give you an idea of, you know, like the way we are planning to do this project. And this is a great way to engage all the stakeholders. I think you have identified many of them. So it's a great way to partner and to get ownership ready to the most, I mean, to the bigger community in a way. Because what we find out in our profession, it's often the issue of maintenance, for example, for a site, like who's going to maintain it. And this happens, the maintaining of a place really happens by the community if they are engaged from the beginning and they feel if it's their place. And when they have ownership, but a true ownership, then the ownership is there and they will maintain it because it's what they wanted and it wasn't imposed on them. And that's a big, big difference. So we feel like taking some time to create this trust, and this ownership is really paying off, you know, towards like the years coming after, because the place is going to be taken care of. So that's also our approach to work. I don't know if you have questions.
Is the Pine Street project completed? Or is it gone into construction?
Well, actually, it's interesting you should say this because we just had a conversation today with RMB. They called us to go into like the next design phase and to go into. So for now, it's just a conceptual drawing, but as of now, actually, we've been hired to kind of develop the design into some construction, you know, documents. So it's
in this project, we will be going into just the design concept,
right,
as opposed to a specific design.
Yeah.
I want to be clear about that.
Sure, thank you.
I know we don't have a lot of money.
Yeah, this is actually what you see here, like, you know, the design now on my screen. This was like the conceptual design.
Mhm.
You know, and this is the same way like we end up with RMB. It was just conceptual, you know, get the vision, get some ideas, and try to articulate a conceptual design about it. and now we are developing.
Right. Karine, can you, was just going to go through our sort of
You want to share your screen?
Yeah, I can do that.
Sure.
Okay, I think I can. Okay. All right. You can see that. Hopefully you can see that. Yeah, so as Karine was saying, you know, the community, and this is very much how we both work, is sort of the core element of the project, sort of led by and mentored by the youth. So our plan is to hopefully begin the planning. It's a 3-phase process. We anticipate it would take about a year and finish up at the end of February or March, which is when the deadline for the grant is, but I think there's a little bit of flexibility there. So sort of our first step is from May through August. We would like to find someone on the town to sort of be the liaison. And I had talked to Jim about this, is if one of you or someone else from sort of the town board or the Climate Action Committee would sort of be our liaison for the project from the town's perspective. You know, obviously we will have report backs and be in contact with you, but it'd be great if we could have like one sort of point person. We have, you know, identified the Onteora Central School District as the lead partner organization, and Jim has already reached out to Larry Edelman, I believe, who's on the school board there, who's quite interested in speaking to us about this. So we feel like we've got an in with that.
Yeah, I spoke to Lance Edelman.
Lance Edelman, Lance,
who's
okay.
the principal of the high school.
Lance is the principal, right? Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, perfect. And to, you know, work with him this spring to identify a group of students, primarily from Olive, who want to sort of work with us on this program starting in September. We want to give highest priority to include students from the town, you know, in the project, and the process of recruiting the students is something that we'll work with Lance to figure out how to achieve. Just the sort of overall idea is that the work would happen as an elective. This is our proposal to Lance. It would be classes that would meet every other week for 2 hours, with then sort of homework assignments that would happen on the alternate weeks. So there would be perhaps guest lectures, instruction, discussion. The students would be given a task to accomplish, and then they would come back. Or we do a lot of the sessions, a lot of the work together in those 2 hours there. And where these classes happen is still to be determined. In terms of whether it's at the school. Some of it will be on site. My log cabin is available. I'm going to turn that sort of into an office studio space. I mean, we can use the picnic tables at Davis Park when the weather's nice, the library. So we'll kind of work on where the venue is. But the idea is to sort of put all of this in place before the end of the semester, and to have a group of students that are committed to working with us, as I said, as an elective, going forward in the fall. And Karine is going to talk a little bit about the curriculum that we're going to develop. And this is based on curricula that she has used in her other projects. There's going to be more detail about this, but we just kind of wanted to give you a sense of what these 10 workshop sessions we're going to cover.
Right, thank you, Cynthia. Yeah, so I mean, you just have like a list, you know, it's not exhaustive, and we change the curriculum for each site because each site is different, as different partners. But basically, we of course go to the site, you know, and we do lots of activity on the site. Sometimes we do some drawings, you know, kind of like make sure like the student really learn and learn how to look and look at, you know, like when you draw, you see the utilities, you see the transportation, you see like all these different elements. So this is something we do. We do creation of sensory maps. It's a very kind of like sense-based approach to design. We do a site analysis, which is more like, you know, technical about, you know, like the sun, the wind, the water, utilities, like, you know, all these different informations. How to read a map, you know, this is like the 101 design, and these are good skills to have. How to design, so we do like some design session about like some, you know, manual. There are lots of manuals about how to design and our own experience. We're going to show them some examples. Also, we're going to share some resources about design guidelines. We have also, learning about community engagement practice and like the best way to engage the community. And this we might, we would want to work with you on this and to get your input on this and what do you think would be also like a good way to engage the community. And so, yeah, all this curriculum, we're going to draft it, and we will be working very close to you or to the person going to appoint to us to make sure this is in line with what you want. So it's very open. It's just like some example. There's like some taking photos, because photos are very important after to do renderings and to kind of like explain a vision, because you need to have some tools for this. I'm just going through the also like engaging with local organization. This is important not only to engage the organization, but for the student to identify the organization and create connections. Often, like there's like some disconnection in the community, so it's a way to kind of like create a more cohesive community. We have also so we are planning to do some field trips, to explore the town. Hoping to go to the Olive Library. I remember they have like amazing history document there that are just so beautiful. I'm just going through the list. Nature Conservancy, like we have like all the different organizations that in agreement with you will integrate into the curriculum. So after we do like what we call the action program is actually when we perform, the workshops. So it will be good to integrate some public event into this workshop, maybe like do a kickoff event when we tell the community about what we're going to do. So it's another way for people to be engaged. We are planning also like a presentation at the end to let the community know what the students have learned and what they are proposing based on what they have shared with us. So there's an example of the guest. We call them the guests who participate in the workshop. So we have local historians, we have New York DEP, we have business owners, artists, school and student staff, and the list of stakeholders that we have that we can really go into. We talked about also doing some surveys, finding a way to really get the input from the community. So this will work on it together. And and after just gathering all this data from the student. This is going to be like our task, to get all this information and put it together.
So you all may or may not know, when we were working on the nature, thank you, Karine. When we were working on the Nature Conservancy application, we put together a robust list of about 20 stakeholders, and Jim was able to get confirmation from a large number of them that they wanted to be part of that proposal, of that project, which was additional funding to do sort of more design development for the flood buyout parcels. So we are hoping to circle back to those folks to say, well, the bad news is we didn't get the Nature Conservancy grant, but the good news is we got the Musser Fund grant, and we would love you to be part of this project, where they would be sort of these guest lecturers, presenters, and talk to the students and engage with them about their own work, and sort of about their ideas for the site and based on their own experience. So we would be able to capture that group of interested people from the community, and bring them into this project. And then we sort of like collate and collect all of this information and put it together, in a way that makes sense. This is not designed by committee. It's something where Karine and Nadège and I are sort of the curators of how we sort of collect this information and combine it in a way that makes the most sense. This process is also not dissimilar from what we had proposed to do with the Nature Conservancy, except the major difference is that the focus is on developing the capacity of young people in our community to do design, to learn about urban planning, to learn about landscape architecture, to think about possible career paths, as well through this process. And at the end of it, is to help them put together a portfolio, you know, with their research, with their data, with their photographs, with designs, which would be something that they could use in their college applications, and also for their own future work. So that's why we're looking at sophomores or juniors, folks that are sort of already thinking about what do they need to show for college. A lot of universities and colleges like kids to have electives. They like to see that they've been working in their community, you know. And so we think this project is going to support them in that way. We're also going to make them talk in public. So they're going to learn public speaking. They're going to learn how to express themselves, you know, to an audience, and just sort of to begin to develop these really important professional skills. So after, we believe the semester ends at the end of January. Carlene's, both of her children are products, graduates of the Onteora Central School District. So I rely on her for all the information about what is the calendar, what does the semester end? And then we take a couple of months to sort of pull all of these things together and present them back. And we will present obviously to the board, but we want the students to have a chance, you know, to do a public presentation to their peers, to their families. The nice thing about having students do this work is that they bring siblings and they bring parents and grandparents. And so it's another way of getting more of the community engaged and involved, you know, rather than just coming to hear some consultants talk about a project, because here the students basically from the community are talking to each other. So we have a timeline of May to August is sort of the planning, the action program, and the actual program and the youth-led engagement happens in the fall semester. We will pick a day and a time of day that works for them. We haven't figured that out yet. You know, if it's during the school day or if it's an after school, we'll need to sort of figure that out, whatever works best with their class schedules, et cetera. And then a report presentation somewhere between February and March. And so we have sort of also laid out here how we think the grant funds will be drawn down. We know this is a reimbursement project, which is okay because we don't have a lot of upfront costs. So that's sort of in the timeline is also our proposed payment schedule. And I hope I didn't leave anything out. Karine, let me know if I missed something.
No, I think that's it.
Okay. I can leave this up here. I can take it down, whichever you would like to do. So now we're open to your questions, comments, suggestions, recommendations.
Okay, down board. Do you want to ask some questions?
Do you anticipate like having a bunch of like a list of options that you guys come up with, or do you plan on having a more like developed project like you did with the like you were showing us for the other projects you've done?
Well, I think it's going to depend on what the community wants. You know, what we tried on the first project is we have like, you know, different vision, but that was kind of actually very similar. And at the end, we kind of like, we had all the students, you know, put their design together and came up with this design. So I think it's going to be also the community to tell us, you know, what, if their vision is already like going the same way, or if we kind of like figure out, you know, different places. I think the beauty of this project also is we have different sites. So I think this will allow us to develop, you know, kind of like different vision. And I feel there is room for everybody here. So we might have one design, you know, that will encompass everybody's need and vision.
Very good.
So I guess I've got a question that it seems like what you're presenting is geared much more towards teaching the kids how to do something as opposed to actually addressing the two parcels we have in Boyceville and what we're going to do with that. So I guess my concern is the kids are going to get a lot of benefit out of this. I'm not quite clear what we, the town, benefit at the end.
Right.
Mhm.
I think it's kind of like, you know, like this give and take. You'd be surprised how the youth are like so gifted for design. My belief is like we are all designers, you know, we know what works and what doesn't work when we go into the site. And I think the youth is still very close to this kind of like, you know, ability and skills. And the design you've seen, you know, that we've done for the African burial ground, it's very detailed, it's very professional, it's very, you know, I mean, I think like you would have paid a consultant, you know, I don't think it could have been as beautiful and thoughtful as this. So I can reassure you from our experience that the product you're going to be delivered by the youth is going to be of very high quality, because the design is going to be made really based and you know, gathering the information from the town, and that's the work they have been doing. And it's a real work, it's a real job to kind of get everybody's vision, and they are very talented at this. So I don't want you to feel like you're being shortchanged because you have an educational component and you're going to have less of a project. From our experience, it's the opposite actually.
And of course, the parcels are going to be the study sites. So whatever happens on site, the photography, the data collection, the research, it's all going to be very much site specific to the parcels, you know, that we're concerned about. It's not going to be sort of all over the place. It's really going to be very tied to what is actually there, you know, the geography, the topography, the river, the built environment, the road, everything that is physically located there is what they're going to be analyzing.
Right, and also I want to add also like it's true like the level of design that we have as professional is more evolved because we've been doing this for many years, and they don't have the same level of like ability, you know, graphically to kind of render their vision, and that's the time we need to kind of like transform all their information and vision into like a professional design.
So I'd like to comment on that. I would agree with the designers that the process has, you know, when I look at the results of their presentation here, the process has yielded some very interesting design. And that's kind of what we're after as a product at the end. But also I can say that when I talk to people about funding for implementation of the design and coming up with a more distinct design for actual implementation, that everyone is where you get funding grants wants this type of process beforehand. They are insisting on community visioning of land before they will give you funding for implementation. So I could see this as being very interesting and productive in a longer term picture here.
So
Yeah.
this is a $10,000 grant, right?
No,
I
this is a very ambitious program they're giving us.
But that's my point. It seems like a very ambitious program for a small grant.
Yes.
And I'm
It is, yeah.
just concerned that it's overly ambitious. I don't know.
Well, I will say two things. First of all, this is the first step. You know, I think that the town of Olive has a wonderful future ahead of it in terms of getting implementation funding for design and planning and building more flood buyout properties. The other piece of this, which we didn't really go into much detail about because we don't have that much information, is the Nature Conservancy has come back to the town and said they would like to help. And what we believe they're talking about, Jim knows, can speak to this more directly than I can, is that they have funds available for us to sort of partner with or be mentored by Sydney. The town of Sydney is got one of the bigger grants, and some of the funding that they're offering would go to pay for the students to participate and learn from what the consultants in Sydney are doing. There could be funding from that for materials, for things that are directly related, you know, to the work that they're doing there that could also help, you know, support this project. Again, to be determined, but there is additional funding available. And I think if we make a case for why we need to sort of draw down on some of the Nature Conservancy funding to support the work here, whether it's buying materials, or it's printing, or it's in other kinds of expenses, that are tied together, we think that there could be a little bit, some extra funding from the Nature Conservancy to support our work here. And the other thing, one of the reasons we're working with students is they're cheap. You know, we just feel like it's an investment in them, and that we're more in a managerial mentoring sort of role, except until kind of the very end when we kind of put all our design skills together. So yes, we understand, Victoria, but it's sort of like we think this is the right way to do it, and we're ready to commit, you know, to this.
So-
And with help from other stakeholders and partners, of course.
I think it looks like a great process. Absolutely. It's a
I have a
small
question
amount of money.
regarding-
Scott's trying to ask a question up there.
Question regarding the students. You talked about juniors and sophomores. Have you considered starting at maybe freshmen, that if this process does move on to the next phase, that we have some history with maybe new students coming in?
Yeah, we're totally open to that.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And maybe it's a mix of different levels. I think that would be even better.
yeah.
A couple of things I'd like to address in it that I didn't see addressed in it, but I think that are important for you to be aware of is in your phase 1 planning, you probably really want to start off on what your limitations are, because there are very distinct limitations in buyout properties
Mhm.
imposed, because each of these properties has an easement on it that has a land use restrictions on it. So that might be the first thing. This is the land, and this is what we cannot do on it.
Mhm.
Because I don't want it to get that way. It's really constrained into a practical result.
Right.
The other difficult, I think more challenging part of all this, which is something we've struggled with, is that we're talking about 2 pieces of property that are not adjacent.
Mhm.
However, there are other properties that have either initiated the flood buyout process and have 3 to 5 years in front of them before we ever see anything done with the buildings there. There's also properties the town has already or are in the process of getting on the opposite side of 28. So when this design evolves, there should be consideration of a longer time frame of what happens when we acquire more properties. And that's a really challenging aspect of it, because you'll say, these are good here now, and if these get developed, we can then implement another kind of overall design with this and integrate it in. That's going to be a challenge.
Right, but I think this is what makes this project so interesting also, is kind of, having this vision and having phases where you start. It's kind of like the vision is a master plan, how the town can have like all this different, opportunity to create a center, to economic development, recreational. You have like all these wishes, and after you have the land and the constraint, as you explained, and you have the time, and then time is going to be like a factor into like phase 1, phase 2. It's going to be. But
Right.
I think if the vision is there, I think it's going to be easier after to develop, more, parcels, because there's something coherent that's already in place. But it will be interesting, to have this in mind and as a master plan can.
So I've got another question relative to what Jim was saying. So I get the impression, Corinne, that the kind of work you do will generate a fairly sophisticated design. Is it realistic that once we have that design, there is money out there to actually construct it? And the second part of my question is I'm assuming that part of the design will be that it can sustain being flooded from time to time.
Of course, yeah, totally. That's part of the constraint. We're on floodplain, so this has to be like flood resilient for sure. And what we learn about, like the budget to build a site, we found that if you have like a strong vision, if you have a strong community engagement and a beautiful rendering of what your vision is, money will come. I'm not saying it's easy. It's going to be work to get it, but it's definitely a process. So that's why
That's what I'm looking for. I just want to make sure that we don't come out with a design and then it's like, well, that's nice, but we got no way of ever getting any money for it.
right. And also, like, you know, when at this point it's a conceptual design. So for example, if we say like, oh, here we imagine, I don't know, like a pavilion of some sort, you know, and that can, you know, like that can be flooded and, you know, things like this. After, when you have the budget, you can decide that this pavilion is going to look like this or like that, you know, like depending on the budget, you can alter and make it work for the money you have. So this is where you have the concept, and after, like, you know, all the detail of the construction will come with the budget.
Okay.
The other, just the other point is that it would be great to have an early conversation with Lance at the high school. You said you worked with the high school students before, and I don't know how that works in terms of transportation and insurance and that kind of thing. And that might be something that we definitely want to address early on, so we know if there's any kind of limitations on that.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I think this is very important, just to figure out like between the time and also their limitation, and we'll work with that as well. So yeah, the earlier we know, the better it's going to be.
And, you know, the idea of doing a lot of this work in the fall is that, you know, at that point, we're hoping that we can do things outside, we can do things in small groups, that there are some, you know, fewer restrictions than there are now in terms of gathering. But, you know, all of that needs to sort of be worked out in terms of what the school's protocols are in terms of students working together and in groups, because there's always Zoom as well. And there's always meeting outdoors, which we have a few good months, you know, to do that. But yeah, we are aware of those requirements that the school may have that we need to consider. And that's why, you know, we're taking that time, you know, in May and June, July, to kind of work through all of that before we get going.
Well, it's very ambitious. It's very exciting. I mean, if I didn't see your prior work, I'd say you're out of your mind. But you have good results. You know, I see these results here that are impressive. And if that's the process that you find works, I'm pretty excited about it. It is important to understand that the high school is a regional school, and that there are different towns involved with students from different towns. And it's important that that we try to make this as Olive-centric as we can, because there is a large community feelings about the loss of their community here. So, you know, they want it to be an Olive revisioning, in a sense. It's important to them. I can tell you that right off the bat, that we want to make sure that we can do everything we can to engage students from Olive in this process.
Sure.
One thing to note, because you're planning on using students from the school, there's been 3 resignations at top level at school in the last month.
Yeah.
I don't know how that's going to impact your ability to, I mean, I'm just saying that there could be a change in the way the school's managed. So that may have an impact on you.
Yeah, that's why, like, yeah, as soon as we can meet, you know, like the actual, you know, representative now, I think it's going to help us. And also, if we have an agreement with the school, then we are also like safe, you know, if there's a change in
Hopefully
the
you can
governance we have.
school principal as opposed to the administration.
Right.
And Scott has his hand up. Yeah, go ahead, Scott.
So Jim, this may be a question to you. So the additional funds from the other project, I think the way to get the school involved, it's going to require a teacher to be involved in this. Would some of that funding be available to help sponsor that teacher to be the liaison for this project?
Good question.
So that's an interesting question. My conversations with the Nature Conservancy is, this is a first thing for them. This is the first time they're doing this. The grant that we did not get, that Sydney got, was granted to Sydney. Sydney has not a handful of properties. Sydney has 100 properties in their town that are displaced from flooding. So they got this grant. It was $45,000. Well, ours was $45,000. Theirs was somewhere in that range, I'm assuming. And their grant was awarded to them because they wanted to engage students in it. That was one of the things that it was attractive, which is very much what we're doing here. They have wanted us to now watch the process as it evolves there and learn from it, which is a great opportunity for the planners, but it's also a great opportunity for someone from our town to partake in that project and maintain that vision in the future. So there's going to be a person that we're going to have to hire, whether it's a teacher, whether it's somebody from the community, or somebody that works in the town will be part of this. We have to determine that, and that's yet to be determined. But the Nature Conservancy always telling me that, you know, funding now does not guarantee future funding. They have told me that that they've indicated a lot that they are interested in working with us. They like the town. They like the relationships we have so far. And they're offering this to us. And they feel that this will have impact on future funding, if not with them, then with other organizations, because we've done this process and have this training. We'll look heads up over anyone else looking for the same kind of funding for projects like this. So I think it's a great opportunity. And when they told me that theirs was all about students, it was just about the same time that we got the proposal from Cynthia, and it was just kind of an amazing coincidence, and it made me feel that we're on the right track here.
Okay.
I hope that answers your questions. You know, so what I'm getting in with the funding from TNC is it's yet to be determined how specific it is. I think there's a certain fluidity in it. He was very careful to preface everything that this is just an outline, a draft of what the process will be. But I think that if we start communicating with them, I think we can find a common ground with the funding and its use.
Okay.
And that they had said something about $6,000, I think is what the sum that they had.
Yeah, and what I'm thinking we would do is look at that money and allocate a certain amount to the planners that we've hired, and a certain amount toward the person who's going to stay with it from the town. And we'll work that out, if that works out with the board, if you guys are good with that. I've been told that it shouldn't be an elected official because we receive a stipend, and this would be kind of a conflict. It could be considered a conflict. Any other questions, comments?
No, I'm good.
Okay. I had a question. What happens next?
Well, let's be clear that we don't have any guarantees from the Nature Conservancy, like I said, but we do want to proceed with your contract. And maybe you want to take what you've heard tonight and maybe tweak it a little bit, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Fine tune it a little bit. Come back to us with a contract and we can start. We have that Musser funding already.
Mm-hmm.
If you're willing to do that, if you feel comfortable with that.
So you want us to give you a contract rather than have the town send us one of yours? Is that?
One of ours, we just make them up.
You make them up.
Yeah.
Okay, well, this I have to defer to Karine because I don't.
But why don't you look at your contracts and offer something up, and we'll talk about it and see if we can come up with, with something that, that works for all of us. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
we can do a contract.
Oh, good.
You know, we will need, you know, the liability insurance, all that kind of stuff, you know,
Yeah, it's the
Right.
usual.
the usual.
Okay.
No problem.
And then the idea is that this scope that we presented here would be like Exhibit A, you know, to fulfill the scope of services outlined in Exhibit A, and then that's what this document is. It would be sort of appended to the contract.
Yeah, I would like to see in either in A or in the contract itself that it does meet the easement requirements on the properties.
Sure.
Because that's a pretty basic legal thing we have to
Yeah.
follow.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, there should be a use plan out there for both properties that kind of spells out that stuff pretty easily.
I had that at the office. I can forward that to you.
Hey, Jim, let's just assume that they're able to start in May. Do you know when the two properties are going to be essentially done as far as clearing?
My understanding is they're going to be done in June sometime.
Oh, okay. Because, I mean, the two that are going to belong to DEP, when I saw them today, they looked like they were done. But I don't know about the other two.
Yeah.
The one had to go back to CWC for a little more funding. They found an additional foundation under the parking lot that they had to take out. So they got a little bit of a delay there in completion. But that company is pretty good. So I
Okay.
presume they'll be done on schedule.
The
Unless
reason I bring it up-
unless that delay pushes them back a little. I don't know.
Reason I bring it up, the first thing on their phase one here is a site visit. I want to make sure they have access to it.
Right.
Well, we can move that to part 2. We're moving down the list a little.
Oh, that will happen in part 2. It's just that the curriculum will be developed in part 1.
Yeah. So
What's the site visit that's under phase one?
Well,
that's part of the curriculum. That's where, so we are planning when the student go back to school, like in September, to start then the site visit. It's
Right.
just like an example of the curriculum. So until September, we won't, take the students. So we should be good.
And I would presume in all of this, because we're dealing with getting onto the land, we're dealing with a third party in the school, we're dealing with the DEC easements, we're dealing with, if we go with the TNC grant, we're dealing with a whole nother 2 entities, a nonprofit and a town, another group of planners in Sydney.
Mhm.
And the possibility of having to arrange some transportation and so forth within this budget. So, we want to make sure that we have a certain amount of flexibility in all of these things and how they evolve.
Sure.
Because one little
Absolutely.
decision will change everything.
Right,
Yeah.
and that's why like this, this is an example of a curriculum, but as you said, like if there's some issues about, transportation, and then we'll, figure out a different way. We have to be flexible because I think there's lots of unknown. We are still in a COVID time, so we have to be very flexible in the way we address this. So yeah, absolutely. This
I
will be
mean,
like,
I think a class trip to Sydney and watching their process or seeing what they've done or not done there and the properties, I think that's a great idea for this,
Yeah.
yeah,
but it might
that
end
sounds
up
good.
being one little trip,
Yeah, and
expense
that's
wise.
fine. That's fine. We just try to we hope for the best and plan for the worst. So
Right.
Yeah.
What we do all the time here. All right,
All
any other
right.
questions?
Nope.
Okay. So you guys work on a contract, and I'll try to let TNC know that we're interested and see what they're gonna require next. Okay?
sounds good.
Okay, very good. All right,
Thank
thank
you,
you
everybody.
all.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
everyone.
Okay, bye-bye. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye now.
Bye.
And also, now that I got you all here, the TNC, we're gonna have to come up with somebody. And I'm open for suggestions. I have one person in mind. I don't know if it has to be a person that's involved in the town, or we can just get a person who might have an interest that has involvement or engagement in different aspects of the town. And that might be somebody who's got, the idea is somebody who's gonna be here for a while. who's around.
Yeah.
That's not going to be moving, that hasn't just moved here, somebody that kind of understands the area. Okay. Let me find my agenda. Any other questions on all that?
Nope.
Scott, you're still there with us. That's great. I did want to talk a little bit about community choice. Here we are. We had a public hearing in the midst of this crazy planned pump storage project. And it was brought up at the last meeting, I think at the hearing, that maybe we should consider postponing it for a month or so until this becomes a little more resolved on the pump storage, because the optics are bad. And I thought I'd open it up for discussion.
Did communicate with Jeff Demansky just to check that any kind of delays wouldn't affect getting an aggregate, joining a new aggregate of towns, because at one point he'd said that we were already kind of running a month late for the aggregate he was trying to put together. But he said that there's some other towns that are also kind of a bit shaky at the moment, and so it shouldn't be a problem if we had to delay a month.
Any other opinions on that?
Simon, you should be able to
Yeah.
talk.
Well, that was my 2 cents, that I thought the optics were bad. There's a lot in front of the Olive residence, as you know, with everything going on. I think, you know, just to table this for a little while is not the end of the world, and I think it might take some pressure off of you also.
What's
think we're getting
your
back.
idea of a little while, Scott?
I don't know if it doesn't make a difference. I think until we hear back from the federal application to say if it's going to proceed or get denied. I don't know what that timetable is on that to get a ruling.
Thinking pushing it off to like June, July, or August, somewhere in that time frame.
Yes.
Okay.
So on that, Drew, a couple of things. One, I think the next version of the CCA takes effect in September, and generally the timeline is at least 6 months from when we get our local law in. So if we don't do it soon and get started, we may have to wait 2 years to get it in, or we may have to join another CCA. So that's one point. Another point is that just by putting the local law in place does not guarantee that the town is actually going to go forward with anything. We could always defer the appointment of the administrator. So for example, the town of Marlborough actually implemented CCA through local law back in 2017. They haven't actually yet implemented the CCA itself. So just putting the local law in place does not commit the town to do anything, especially if there's some sensitivities around. I would also say though, Scott, that I think that putting the local law in place says exactly what the town is saying about renewable energy, which is what we said in our submission to FERC. We support renewable energy and we're not negative about it in our town. We're actively doing something about it. So to me, it says that we, the town, are supportive of it and we're actually doing something about it. And just the same way that we put in a submission, which Jim very sensibly wrote, to not have the pumped hydro project, at the same time, we're actively going about doing the right thing for our town and its residents. My 2 cents. Thank you.
Also throw in what Chet had written. We had a discussion amongst the CAC in via email that the pumped hydro actually, I think, raised some environmental awareness. We do actually have some energy on that front right now, which I think Simon was somewhat also hinting at, amongst a good number of those people that were at our public meeting. Of those 300 people, a lot of them were very saying, as a concept, we really need to be pushing these green energy projects, just not ones on that scale and that with that amount of disruption. And
I
this would be a relatively limited disruption,
Mhm.
environmental win.
Did everybody
would
see
be in
what,
favor of
Dan-
putting it
Dan
on
White-
the agenda for May.
did anybody see what Dan White put in the chat? That Mr. Rojas was on WAMC tonight saying he's withdrawing his proposal.
Yeah, but until he actually does it, doesn't mean anything.
Absolutely, I agree. I agree.
Mr. Rojas has said from 4 weeks ago when
Yeah, I know.
David Linefsky first engaged with him, that he would be amending or changing or moving, and he has made many promises to that effect. So I told David Linefsky tonight, I'll believe it when I see it. I'm a little skeptical of this man. So that would be great. So I think what I'm hearing is a little bit of both here. And what I would suggest is we push it back 1 month,
I would agree.
not make an action tonight or tomorrow night, but wait till May.
Yeah, I'd just like to put it on the record, I am reluctant to move it back to, say, June or July, but May should not have really much impact.
In that case, I will leave it up to you to bring it up next month and put it on the agenda there, David.
I will, absolutely.
All right. Any more on community choice? Okay, Dan says he agrees. All right, moving on. We talked last year in the fall about getting some security cameras for the Davis Park pool and have a light on the pavilion, facing the pavilion, and maybe a camera, and a camera facing the highway garage. And we got a quote for $5,385 plus tax. And we checked with the vendor, that's from Rest Assured. We also had gotten one from HRT, which was integrating Wi-Fi, and it was a lot more money. And we had kind of last year agreed that Rest Assured was the way to go. And then we punted till now. Well, now's the time to bring this up again. They will honor that price again with that configuration. There might be there's a little bit of a change in it. We'll see what they can do for us, but it's going to be around that price. So are you guys okay with moving forward with that?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay. So
Is there-
I'll make a
is there a
motion
monthly-
tomorrow.
Jim, is there a monthly fee with that also?
I don't believe there is. I believe this goes on to a video recorder that you can play upon, and I think it erases after so much time. It
All right,
can
I
put a
think
live,
we should verify that before we,
good point.
before we,
So we have this exact same setup in all of our homeless shelters, and with Rest Assured, and there isn't a monthly fee, but you should definitely check.
Okay. Great.
Jim, just
right.
a question. Does that include all the proper signage for around all the buildings? Posting?
Oh, I don't know. That's an interesting question. It doesn't say that on the bid. But you know me, I can do signage.
Not that we need more signs, but I know that's part of the, normally all part of surveillance.
I'll have to see if that's a legal requirement for any kind of prosecution down the road. Vic, do you have them at your place?
Nope.
Just referencing this, Jim, I know it's come up in different highway meetings, and I think a couple of years ago when I was at highway school, as far as proper signage, as far as enforcement and whatnot, and just making everybody aware, so just a curiosity on my end.
Maybe we could do it where we have our other signage and video,
Yeah,
surveillance cameras in place. Okay. All right, I'll check in with Gino on that tomorrow, and we'll get something going tomorrow night. I just want to give you an update. The bridge over the Esopus is going to be starting the early stages of implementation. I believe the bid process went out and they might have even awarded, I'm not certain, but they're going to be starting grubbing on that for the new bridge, which is downstream about 50 feet from the existing bridge. And it will come out, if you recall, 228 in a T intersection. And I had a pretty good conversation on a Zoom meeting last week with DOT and the rail trail. There'll be two things. There'll be a bike path and a pedestrian path over that bridge to connect to the rail trail. It might end up going, I don't know. I'm not quite sure how you get on the bridge from the rail trail. That's still yet to be determined. It might go under the bridge and come around. The bridge will then deposit people onto 28. And DOT has agreed to build a 12-foot wide pathway up 28 to Onteora. And they said they might not be able to do 12 feet the entire way, but they plan to bring it up to a crosswalk, and they're open to a new crosswalk design. It won't be a light, but it might be a button where flashing lights if somebody wants to cross rather than a stoplight. State laws, if you are a pedestrian, you're going across, you're supposed to stop anyway. So that's the kind of plan that we got. They will be looking for a maintenance agreement for that walkway from the town. The question came up of whether they will require snow removal, and the kind of agreement that we talked about without DEP being there was that if the DEP, they would be responsible for the walkway over the bridge. And if they remove snow there for access to the trail to bring it into Boyceville, then we would have to remove snow. But I think that's all something we can work out. We've been talking about getting a sidewalk or some kind of pathway up there for years. It will be not a sidewalk, but a kind of like the material on the rail trail. So I think that's kind of exciting and could open up that flow of pedestrian traffic from the rail trail into Boyceville. And as Boyceville evolves, that could be really interesting.
When did you say they're going to start this bridge?
They won't start construction till next year.
Okay.
I think they're looking at finalizing it all, like, everything should be completely done by spring of 2023, I believe is what I heard. Okay. Any questions
Just
on it?
a question on that parallel 28, that trail, that would be all kind of a loose aggregate like the rail trail
Yeah.
versus a paved. I just didn't know if it would be something beneficial as far as a wider shoulder of the state maintaining for plowing purposes, and just an ease of basically on a second or a third pass from the DOT.
I
clearing
think they don't want to put people on the roadway there. I believe that their plan is actually to put it on the other side of the stormwater
Okay.
ditch.
All right.
But, that will evolve. We'll have some more meetings with them about that.
Yeah.
But it was kind of exciting that we got them to agree to it. It was like DOT has never been that agreeable with the previous over the previous years. So that was kind of cool. And the school requested it too, because they want access to the rail trail for their running teams and things. Anything else on that?
Nope.
Great.
That's great.
Okay. Tomorrow I will be making a motion that we allow the use of the town facilities, the fields for Mountain Valley Little League and the Ontario Youth Football League. They both have submitted, I think I forwarded to you, their use plans and their plan of operations during the COVID pandemic. And everything looks quite satisfactory. And they also have provided their insurance that we ask them for every year. They did, the Little League did ask if they could get in a little early because we had that nice weather on Saturday. And I kind of just blanket said, yeah, you guys can use the practice fields on Saturday. So, you know, if they maintain their things, I didn't want to make them have to wait into the next week when it was this week when it's going to be rainy and wet, and let them have an extra day in there. So I hope you can all slap me on the wrist if you don't like that. All right. So that'll happen. If you have if you have any questions about that plan, get a hold of me tomorrow. I'll try to answer them for you. I did want to give you an update. We had a letter from Tom Oliveri and Jane over on the Bushkill there in West Shokan concerning their property after the December 24th storm and the erosion that happened on the Bushkill on the bank near their property. I spoke to MMI, who's now SLR, and I talked to Mark Carabetta about that, and they're going to, they went out, when did I see them? Last Thursday, they went out with a drone and flew a drone over and mapped that section that they did the work on, so they can look and evaluate what their design was, what the previous stream looked like, and how the stream might have shifted or not as a result of that storm. And they want to see what happened. And from there, once they do an evaluation, we'll have a discussion with them on if there's any of that money left, if we can get any more money, or if it's, you know, something that needs to be left alone. I don't know, but we'll hear more from them.
Have we gotten back to Tom and Jane at all on this?
I spoke to them.
Okay, well, that's fine.
Yep. And in addition, along there, Adam Doan from I don't know, I never know who works where at that Shokan watershed.
Soil and water.
Soil and water, yeah. He's going to be. I had a conversation. We were supposed to do some planting along there, in addition to the willows that were planted there. We'll see how it goes. The willows look like they're just sticks in the ground. I don't know. And we were looking at them the other day, and you know, the problem you have there is it's all of that stone, you know, that stream rock, you know, that's just down there with some sand in it. There's not a lot of real soil, nutrient soil to grow anything. So we'll see what happens. They did get some grass growing. I saw that, but not much else.
I don't think willows need a lot.
Yeah, as long as the stream is depositing some stuff there periodically, they'll be fine.
Yeah.
Okay. I did want to bring up, there was this discrepancy in the zoning maps. And I think, I don't know, did we discuss that at the last meeting or just individually? There was a, we discovered there are two maps existing. One was created in 1975 that was approved by town board resolution. And then one set in 1999 that was printed that was supposed to be copies of that version of the map. And there was a discrepancy in it that only recently came to our attention. So I was able to get a pretty good copy of the zoning map. And we are looking at Copy Hut. I got it digitized, and we are looking at Copy Hut to see if they can produce a larger version of it. And when they do that, we'll see if it's of better quality. And if it is, we might, you know, produce a few more of them.
Good.
Let's give you an update on that.
Jim, do you think there's any value in, because of all this confusion of us, the town board, recertifying that is in fact the legitimate zoning map for the town?
I don't think it'll hurt, but if we want to do that, we better make sure that it's right on all the other areas in town.
No, I meant the 1975 map that Dawn has, that is in fact, whatever that map is, that's the legitimate zoning map.
Right. Are you saying there's two 1975 maps?
No, I'm just saying that because
Don't confuse me.
there's actually 3 maps out there. There's that one,
Yeah,
the one that was printed in 99.
right.
Then there's what the county has, which I think was made from the 99 map.
Right.
Is because that there's that confusion and those maps are out there in the public for other people that have them. Would it be a benefit for the town board to, and
Absolutely. Once we
2029,
verify that
verify
the
that there
map
might
that
be
we are
some-
printing is the map that was approved in 75.
yeah,
Right, Don? God, if I never want to hear about maps or hydros after this one.
well, other than the fact that at some point, some board.
The only
town board's
official
gonna have
map,
to redo that map.
the
Is the
only
one in
official
Galesburg.
map is the one that's in the vault.
Oh, right.
And we could always go back to the really big one
But that
if
one's
we
all
need to.
pieces.
Okay. While we're at it, Drew, I'm going to ask you to speak a little bit about the zoning updates,
Sure.
where you guys are at.
Okay, so I had submitted to the Ulster County Planning Board the changes we made or suggested we make to the subdivision code and to the zoning code. And that was addressed at their meeting last week. The changes we made to the subdivision code were relatively minor. There was no county impact, so we can move forward with that with no sweat. On the zoning changes, most of the changes were insignificant or minor clarifications. We did add accessory apartments to the code also, and the county did have some required modifications for that, which hopefully they'll send this week or next week. And they weren't major, oh my God things. They were more or less wanting us to even soften it more to make it easier for people to have accessory apartments. So I hope to address that with the zoning committee and get back to the town board with moving forward with making those those changes. And the other is, I had sent you guys, excuse me, I had sent you guys our suggestion for the STR. If you guys are in agreement, I would like to also submit that to the county to see what their comments are before we move with trying to adopt that. Probably, I'm guessing we're not going to be able to adopt that until probably sometime this summer. Does anybody have any problems with the SDR that you might have looked at? I know it's kind of detailed and lengthy, but it accommodates most of what Jim brought up, and other comments from Steve Dibble and company on the zoning committee. And I think, and I could be wrong on this, but I think it's fairly consistent with what the county planning board has suggested to other communities on their STR regulations.
I'd like the little time to give it another look over.
Okay,
I'd like to think about what the implications, I mean, it looked good on first read to me, but then I put it down and got occupied with us other stuff. So
there were some things that you had originally suggested that we did not address, and if you're still concerned about them, I can talk to you about why we didn't address them.
okay,
Yeah, we
And,
chose not to.
I'm sorry?
We chose not to.
Yes,
It's
Right.
one.
yeah, I just want to give it another fresh eyes of thinking about it in terms of what it means to people that already have existing accessory units either in their house or an outside building, and what that code will mean to existing.
well, okay, it's worth reading it to make sure you see what I think is in there. What it essentially will require them to do is register, make sure they're registered with the county and get a permit to have that with the town. The one thing that I'll say we the town board, maybe the zoning committee can help with a suggestion, is the code says we're going to put a cap on how many are allowed in town. And one way to do that would be to figure out roughly how many we think we got in town and make that the cap now, so we don't get any more. I'm not sure what the right number, or I'm not sure quite how to determine that yet. I'll see if I can, maybe I'll touch base with some other people, other towns to see how they determine that cap. I know that Woodstock created a cap and then they wound up having to go back and change it. I don't remember what that was. We opted not to put the cap in the code, so we don't have to constantly change the code. It's just it's like setting fees by the town board on that with a cap. Same with fees in the code. Don't want to put any fees in the code. We'll just set that as fees by the town board as a separate thing.
Okay. I did like the general direction of it, where it incentivized people who live here to have a short-term rental in their house or in their property, and disincentivized people who did not live here.
Right. There's one area in there that I suspect is going to create a problem. Is we basically are saying LLCs are not allowed, but I can also see where someone that just has, let's say, one STR on their property might create an LLC for that one
For their
property to try to
yeah.
isolate themselves from liabilities.
But doesn't it say they can't, LLCs can't purchase property for the purpose of having an STR?
I don't think so, but we'll have to I can take a look at that.
Yeah, I haven't looked at it in a little while, so I'll have to look again.
Okay, so I'll hold off until you give me the go ahead, Jim.
And we'll probably want to send it to Dan as well
Yeah,
at some point in that process.
yeah.
Okay.
Well,
Anything else?
I was also thinking, as far as why I'm wanting to go to the county, I think it would be best to have addressed some of the county's responses before we have a public hearing on it at the town board level,
Right.
so that
That
we've
makes sense.
already got that cleaned up.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other comments? Thank you. Drew? I dumped a lot of stuff on the lap of the OCAC for the Hamlet land acquisitions by DEP. We have to make that choice soon, probably within the next 6 weeks, whether we want to change the land acquisitions that exist currently in Shokan, Boyceville, and West Shokan.
Yeah, we're starting to look at it and figure out exactly what it is that's needed by us, noting streams, noting acreage, sorting by acreages and finding out how many parcels we're really talking about at various cutoffs. So we're going to start working on that in earnest shortly. I also want to get a call in with Tim Cox and just see if he has any other advice on things you might want to be looking for, so we don't have to go back through again and waste effort.
It's really thick stuff to wrap your head
There's
around.
a lot there for sure.
Yeah.
And there's some discrepancies I've already noticed as far as them being vacant lots and things like that. But
Right.
we'll note all that stuff and we'll get all that info so we have some quality stuff to work off of.
I mean, the basic gist of it is to look at like Shokan, where we have a wastewater treatment facility to be, moving along with at some point. And we want to see if we want to restrict the ability for DEP to purchase land there in their land acquisition program. Currently in that area, they, I think, are status 1B, which means that they are within a 60-day travel time to the portal to New York City, which makes that hamlet eligible for 1 acre purchases. Now, 1 acre purchases might be great because you can't really develop on them, but it's the 2, 3, 4, 5, and 10 acres that we might want to be able to leave on the open market for private development, because we have that wastewater system there. That could really spur some growth there.
I would think we want to ban any sale within the hamlet of Shokan until the wastewater treatment plant's in place.
I don't know if you can't put that kind of limitation on it to DEP. This is a 5-year thing that we do. And it's very set in stone how that's procedure.
So you can't ban it outright? Is what you're saying?
Not in that, on this document that we're sending into them.
Okay.
I mean, we can ban it altogether. Yeah. Let me take that back. We can. But the problem is the hamlet designations are not the same as the sewer district.
Yes, I understand.
It's way bigger. So you're gonna tell people way past the Pine View Bakery that they can't sell a DEP.
Okay, I didn't realize the hamlet was that much bigger. Okay.
Yeah, so the hamlet, that's why it makes it so complicated. There's the hamlet designations are as they are in the mapping that were provided by DEP. That's been negotiated a long time ago. And on the other hand, we might want to say that we will allow a certain acreage of properties to be purchased in Boyceville. But we might, one of the third options in all this is that we can say that any property of any acreage can be bought in a 100-year floodplain. And I think that's something
That's
worth
what-
considering.
Yeah.
Because if you're in a 100-year floodplain, there's not too much available area for development.
Yeah, as I think I said before, though, we have some properties where like, a 1/10 of an acre in the corner of a 3-acre parcel is in the floodplain. And like, how does that affect? Does that mean that they're in the floodplain or not in the floodplain?
And that's a good question, Tim. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great question.
Because I know on Coldbrook, there's a bunch of those properties that have just little bits of them that are in that plane.
Right. Right.
And we're also looking to get a map from the DEP of their acquisition priority map. We're not sure we're gonna be able to get it, but you have one at the town office?
The priorities?
The actual map of priorities by parcel.
We have a map of priorities by the whole town map, an area of mapping.
Yeah.
It says priority, like where I live is a high priority for acquisition because it's, again, within 60-day travel to the portal. So if you're anywhere near the dividing weir on either side of the reservoir, above the dam, you're going to be in that 60-day travel.
Right.
But that map exists in the hallway there outside the assessor's office.
Try to get a good look at it.
Okay. Anything else on that?
Not yet.
Okay, Dawn, we're going to go into executive session to discuss the employment of status of an employee. Is that a good reason?
Personnel, yes.
Yes.
Do you want me to put us all in a breakout room then? Would that be the easiest way to do this?
Right, I can't hear Dawn. She's
Mary Ann wants to say something before we go into executive session.
All right, who was making the motion? Who's second?
I'm going to make the motion.
Now second.
And David's seconding. Mary Ann said thank you to everyone before she left in chat.
All right.
Muted again.
Dawn is muted again.
Should just be able to hit space bar to talk.
Okay, so last time you shut your recording off, so I can't get that information. So if you don't need me to stay here,
We don't.
okay,
We'll-
and this
we'll-
is all you're gonna talk about, I'd be happy to go. But I really need you to write it down. Who's making the motion to leave the meeting, the time, okay? And then who
Okay.
closes the meeting and the time.
I've been hearing about this for 3 weeks now.
I'm also
Oh,
going
you
to.
have not. I haven't been that bad.
Brings it up every
But-
day.
I'll also just pause the meeting and try to re-record the ending part so you have our closing.
Yeah, I
If
mean,
I
you
forget,
turn-
we'll also
you-
try to write it.
When if you want to do with that, you can turn on the, take it off pause and get the motions at the end, and that'll make me happy.
Yeah.
All right?
Between the
So-
6 of
We'll do.
us, can we all jot down who made the motion and the time and who seconded the motion?
All
And
right?
maybe we'll have a one iota of possibility that we'll get it right.
Okay, and I have one more thing. I did notice that Mary Ann left, but she had made a comment about a public meeting. just so on that CCA, just so you realize that if you do put it off for more than like 1 month, you are probably going to have another public hearing on
Okay,
Okay.
it,
that would be
okay?
reason not
Because
to.
it's only good for a certain amount, reasonable time frame. So if you're putting it off 2 months or more, you're going to need to definitely do a public hearing.
okay,
Okay? All right.
very good.
Good night, everyone.
Good night,
See you
Dawn. Thank
tomorrow.
you.
See you
Thanks, Dawn.
tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Okay, I'm gonna pause. Why don't you announce to close that session so we have it in the recording for Dawn?
Sure, are we recording?
Yeah.
Okay, we just came out of executive session. It's 9:17 on a motion made by Drew Bodges, or David Edinger, and seconded by Drew Bodges at 9:17 PM. Can't even get it straight here. I also make a motion that we close the regular meeting.
I'd like to bring up one last thing, just
Uh,
not discussion. At the police commission meeting, John Kurz, who lives on Upper Sampsonville Road, brought up an idea that he would like the town board to at least consider is passing a local law for a town-wide speed limit on all town roads. As he's seeing on his road, people going 45, 50 miles an hour. And you just wanted to at least have that up for discussion at some point in time. So I don't care. We don't need to discuss it tonight. I
Does
just
he have a proposed speed he would like to say?
No. I mean, I'm pretty sure we have the authority to do that. The question is, do we have to sign every single mile of road, or can we just have a sign coming in when you come into town? I don't know the answer to that really. But anyway, it's something, it's been talked about before. Usually the problem with it is the cost of the signs and stuff, but I think John's speaking not only as a person that lives on the road, but as a police commission and as a police officer. He just sees people traveling faster on town roads than they used to.
Yeah, I see that on High Point too.
Yeah, they go whipping down High Point Mountain Road.
You know, one of the thoughts I had when Drew and I discussed this earlier in the week was that maybe we could have a town speed limit that's posted when you enter town, but you also can, instead of signing the whole town, you might be able to spot sign roads as needed and trying to like slowly, gradually, put the signage up. But it is a lot of signs.
Yeah.
I don't know what the legalities of that either.
That's something I have to look into.
I don't think that can be done without studies on each road. I said every road is has their own limits of sight distance, and this is what the state does on our behalf. Yes,
I know they do that when you specifically say a certain road, but I'm pretty sure we have the authority to do a town-wide limit.
Yeah, City of Kingston has signs when you enter the city that say the speed limit is 35 miles an hour in the City of Kingston.
Right. Which, I mean, whether that it's the right number for a particular road or not, it's a lot better than 55, which is what it is now.
correct.
Well, we'll have to look into it a little.
Yeah, we'll have to look into it. All right. I'll second Jim's motion to close the regular meeting.
Favor. Aye.
Bye.
Bye.
See you tomorrow. Thank you.
Bye.
Folks.